Okay, so here we are again, and welcome to episode 4 of How Al Does It. I think it's episode 4. I don't know, I'll number these things out, but for right now I'm just recording. I was just reiterating in my mind the parameters of this project. This is the 300 Norma blown out, customized, flat out, balls to the wall iteration of the 300 Norma Meg. Oh, and it's interesting, by the way, since there might be kids watching. There have been many hot roddings of the 300 Norma Mag case. A few things that are important right now. Number one, you can't get 300 Norma Mag, but Lapua 338 mag cases in the Norma configuration are laying thick on the ground. Well, for what we wanted to do, which is maximize this cartridge, I planned from the start to use the 338 case instead of the 300 case. So, we can call that serendipitous. Some of the things we want to address is, well, the first thing we want to address is case life. I can make several iterations to be equally accurate because that has to do with balance and barrel timing and control of harmonic vibrations and a bunch of other stuff that's not really affected by case design. But case design dramatically affects long-term accuracy of these cases. So, accuracy, yes. Case life, all about it. Make good cases, keep good cases. And why not maximize the case? I mean, I guess I have to use this term again. It's stupid not to. I run all of my cases at the upper windows for a bunch of reasons. Number one, powder doesn't burn right till you got it cramped up to the top and rolling. Any race car driver knows this, that wide open throttle is where you run. You tune everything for what, so we're tuning this to wide open throttle. So we're starting with the 338 case, and we're running it flat out. Well, I just wanted to throw this in there because most people don't realize it. Flat out is a term from back in the steam engine days. We think, in the 50s, flat out was like my race cars dropped down going flat out. Well, that has nothing to do with it. Flat out is much older than that, and it's tied to an expression that I've grown up with all my life, balls to the wall. I always took that to mean that you back up as far as you can go and you put your balls to the wall and you head out, flat out, asses and elbows. Well, that's just not true. There is no innuendo, no sexual connotation to any of this stuff. It all started with steam engines running flat out. Steam engines were governed by something called a ball governor, which is an interesting piece of kit, and it's got weighted balls, and they spin, and they run a couple of lever arms that pull a bar up and down. That bar reaches over and it hits the, I'll call it a carburetor assembly because everybody knows it's not a carburetor assembly, it's not a throttle assembly, it's not a steam control valve assembly, it's an entirely different thing. But suffice it to say that when the motor's trying to run out of control, as it spins up, it's a governor, okay? This all comes from a steam engine governor. Steam engines can make tremendous power, and if you let them burn out of control, they can blow sky high. We don't want that, so we need to govern the power, the steam. I don't understand steam technology. All I know is that I see these things in people's living rooms and they're wicked cool, and they got a couple of balls hanging, they go up to a couple of cross points, and there's a thing that goes up and down, and that runs a bar that goes over here and goes up and down, and it runs some kind of a governor damper assembly on the steam engine. So the faster that thing spins, the more the balls go out, and as these weighted balls go out, you can find pictures of this on the GoogTube. Go look it up. The balls come out, the lever is actuated, it governs the surges, it governs something in that motor. So when you're going flat out, those balls are all the way up here, they're running flat out. So that's what we're doing with this cartridge. We're running it flat out, and incidentally, the term is balls to the walls. Because when you're passing through a cut in your steam engine, and you're pulling a grade, and you are flat out giving her, the balls spread out, and it's balls to the walls. So, just letting you know that when I use an expression like this, I'm not being dirty. So, we want this thing to run hot as it can run, and still maintain brass life. So I'm going to run down here and I'm going to show you the steps we go through to incrementally gain each of the things. And not only that, I'm going to show you the presentations that I make to the reamer maker, the logic that we use behind it. So, let me, well, first of all though, while the camera's still up here, I'm going to start with where I start. I go over here and I find my 30s in the file. Okay, because I need some prior art to work with. So, I go grab my 30s, presuming that there's some 300 Norma mag stuff in there, and I'll set that down here. And I'll run this camera down. Again, as per usual, I just got a wild hair and said, hey, I'm going to tell them all about this process. Because there's quite a bit to the process. And I want to make it so somebody else can do the same process and not run into all the problems people run into when they're ordering reamers and such. I plan everything. And I think it's important. Well, for instance, these papers are in my way. When I start my range, we've had a wind event going on around here for a few days, and it has blown stuff apart. With my old target frame, I built a big rock and up and down target frame so that I could and did mount one of my Ailer 43 pickups to the top of that, one of my acoustic targets, so I can shoot through it at 100 yards. And then I've got another acoustic frame down at 200 yards, and then I've got an impact point at 500 yards, so that I can shoot groups through 3 disparate targets and record them to prove for once and for all, and to bet anybody on the internet, and to throw out the challenge. If you think you can make bullets go to sleep, bring it. But anyway, my target frame came apart because of this extreme wind. So, first thing I did is I went out, because I do things in a orderly fashion, I measured between my verts, and then I started drawing up. None of this matters to you, but it was here. And designing a welded steel frame for my targets, and one that when the Nimrods come out here with their soon-to-be banned semi-automatic weapons, and they shoot holes through the things, they're easily repairable. Oddly enough, because that's a private range, and because I'm picky, and because I have brilliant friends and associates, my target frames have never been shot. The only thing that's ever been shot on my target frame is a stapler. Because I've got 7 target frames out there, and they all have a stapler hung up in the top of them. Either hung or sitting on a ledge or something, and some spare staples so you can just drive up and staple a target on. Somebody was having trouble with their high and low, and they ran high and they hit one of my stapler handles, and that makes me giggle. But my target frames have never been shot up by anybody, because I can tell people like that to take a flying leap. Basically, you come out here and have your ducks a little bit in a row and respect the property. So here's where we're going to go. We've got a file here where we're going to try to design this. And this file has got drawings all the way through. I have gone out and measured up prior art. There are 2 things that are important here. The largest one being we're designing this entire setup around a single bullet. The new 245 grain bullet that just came out from Berger. 245 grain 30 cal bullet, which comes close to turning this thing into a 338. So anyway, we went over, we picked up our file, we've defined our parameters. We want to shoot this bullet as hard and fast and accurately as we can. And we're going to use the 300 Norma case to do that, only we're going to modify it. So I go over to my 30s and I find, I put this on top. I cheated, so understand there's, it's not like I went over to my 30s and there it was. This is a 300 Norma that was designed by someone whose initials are RK. And it's essentially good, except that this RK fella knows perfectly well that you must jam fit your cases. You must make good cases. And he chose to go with the 300 cases. So therefore, his neck is full length on this print. So he's short chambering this. He's got it fat butted. He's got it fat shouldered. He's got this radius. Well, he shows it as 0. Maybe I'm going to have to look into that. And he shows this radius at 0.06, which I call 60 thou. This radius is 60 thou. This one is 0. We talked about this. It's a different reamer maker than I'm using. And I might just give him a call and say, will you do a 0 radius up here? That's a beautiful thing. That's better than what I've got. We'll get to that in just a minute. But the downside of this reamer is it's got some of the good stuff. It's got the fat butt. It's got the tight radius right here. They're calling it out as 0. I hadn't noticed that before. That's great. 45-degree area here going into the free bore, which in this case is 1.850 long, the free bore area. He's got a 3087 on the free bore and a 342 neck. So this is what a reamer print looks like, and this is a really, really good spec. The only thing I don't like about this is it's designed to jam on 300 Norma brass, which means the shoulder is back here, which means the neck is 286 long, and he said his free bar at almost 200. Well, I wanted something different, so we'll lay this out. I took this print and I stole from it a bunch of the numbers. And the Kiff of my acquaintance has been kind enough through the years to, well, he supplied me, but I print them out because I do a lot of them. This is a blank reamer print. I say it's the Kiff's because anybody who's done this before is going to recognize this as Dave Kiff's work. I've used 3 different reamer makers. I am very happy with the way we communicate, he and I. So, blank reamer print. We start with a blank reamer print and we start transferring. Let's see what I've got here. Well, this is something different. So let's go back to this file. See if this has what we want. Ta-da. Here we go. Here we go. We start transferring some of the numbers that we need. Now, I'm not math savvy and I don't want to do all this stuff, so I put Dave. I'm calling this 300 Norma Meg, and in this case Tapio variant. Note these 2 radii, right here and right here, I've got called out as 60 thou, because that's what some of my, but neck shoulder and shoulder body as small as possible. These are just some notes I wrote on here. As small as possible. And then I gave him the length that I want, the freebore that I want, the fat buttedness that I want. I threw this little cartoon at him and I said, take it away, boss. Which it took him, I won't say how long, which he did. And he came up with this reamer print, which I'll show you, not because I want you to either understand it or copy or anything, because there are things about this that normal people don't like. But Dave sends me back an official reamer print with all the other numbers filled in, and he dropped this to 30 thou. Left this as 60 thou, 45-degree lead going in and a lot of this stuff. I'm not going to have you stare at this so that you can understand what's going on so much as just say, we start with a blank print. we go to some prior art, of which I have 3 of. This is the one I chose as being the closest. And this came out of my, need to start putting this stuff back because I don't want to mix up my files. So, now we have a completed reamer print. The only thing I had to do was text back, "You the man. Thank you for a perfect print." He sent me this back to proof. I proofed it. Drawn by what I'm calling it. I proofed it. I sent back. Boom. So the reamer is ordered. This is a done deal now. And because of this, I'm also going to, in my case, and again, I do not and will not ever advocate that anyone else does this, but I'm very careful about this. I then send to my die maker this drawing. And this drawing has got, I started to, no, I'm not even going to show you any of these filled in because I do my dies, I'll say my own way. It's not really my own way, but I fill them in. Every size case needs slightly different sizing effects. In this case, I grabbed one that's got this 0.2 filled in only because this is the point where I want this sizing effect, and these are kind of standards. I prefer 100 thousandths of land here versus a knife edge. Don't know if you can read that, don't really care because this is kind of above and beyond the pale. I don't know that I want to say I do this because people might misapply this. But this is the internal dimensions I want to call out on a button style replaceable bushing sizing die that I will send to the appropriate reamer maker. I give them a dimension that I want down here for sizing at the 0.200 mark, which can vary, but I'm going to call it the 200 mark because I'm just making a die. Some of these are 250. On some of these big cases this changes, but I fill in the amount of sizing effect that I want at the base. I come up and I fill in the amount of sizing effect that I want at the shoulder. I call out this angle and I ask that they don't give me a knife edge in here. These are things the way I do. Remember, this is shit Al does. I'm not telling anyone to do this. I will next fill one of these out, send it to 1 or maybe 2 different reamer makers because I'm going to make several of these chambers. Now that we're building this hot rod, let's be solid. I'll probably build some more just because I'm like that. I'll build 1 or 2 for myself and I might build. Again, the only reason, now that I think about it, I'll back off. I probably only will build 1 more. Because the only downside to this 300 Norma project is the big bolt face. I'm working on something called the Hellbringer case, and in this case the analogous case to this 300 Norma, which is almost inarguably the best 30 cal case on the planet. Even though I sell a lot of WSMs, that's a walk-around hunting cartridge. To maximize it for the big bullets, you need something bigger. And to maximize it for the big bullets and to use something bigger, you've got to pick a cartridge case. I won't do a belted Magnum. There's a lot of different things that I could do. Right now, the PRC, the 30 PRC, the 6.5 PRC, which is basically the same Magnum bolt face. It can be done with a 404 Jeffrey, or it can be done, their proprietary case is technically not a 404 Jeffrey case because it's more like they had taken a 300 Win mag and took the belt off. In other words, 404 Jeffrey case has got a rebated case rim, so it actually holds a little bit more. And with the 404 Jeffrey case, I can essentially match, well, one of the pioneers in this was Sean Carlock with his 338 Edge. He essentially matched the 338 Lapua mag and Norma mag. But I digress. What I'm saying is we have to pick a case. There is no good brass cases at this point for this new hottest craze, the PRC mess, which is essentially a 300 Norma mag, only a little smaller. But without getting all out in the weeds, let me just say that I print these off and I send one with each proprietary case that I make. And I've played with, very rarely at this point at the 200 from the bolt face, very rarely is this dimension and this dimension parallel to the walls of the chamber. I do more sizing effect here and less sizing effect here because I've got a capture effect, and my goal here is to set up a die that will make these hot rod cases last for, let's just say, 50 firings. That's just a good round number. And after the second or third firing, they will produce top-notch accuracy. They'll shoot so stinking good on fire form that you could use them for hunting. I know people in the bench rest realm that'll go out and fire form during a match. So you can make, if everything is properly sized, you can make a fire form load shoot stinking pretty good. But now you have to maintain that. And you have to eliminate what is commonly called, in the parlance at large, brass flow, which it is not. Got all these knobheads out there thinking that the pressure in here causes the brass to flow forward, to extrude. Should be big cheese hole cases. I mean, it should look like Swiss cheese, that case, because it's all flowed out of there like honey when you put your thumb in it. No, it's nothing like that. Brass flow, or growth forward, comes from you jamming up into the sizing die, which is why the sizing die is so stinking important. This is the single biggest part of the paradigm. Yes, design, yes, tight radii, but you must have a sizing die that fits scrupulously perfectly. So I'm going to turn around now. The next thing I'm going to order up is a sizing die, and I'm going to do it off of my finely planned reamer print. Not advocating this because few are the people that can take this reamer print and make a chamber that's exactly this shape. This is fact. You go out and spend as much as I have on letting other people cut your chambers, and I've sent my reamer off and had 3, 4, 5, 6 chambers cut at the same time by the same guy in a row, and they come back not being the same, not fitting. So the reamer guys are going to fight you. I mean, the die people are going to fight you a little, but understand, I send them very good information, and then if I cut a chamber that's oversized, that's my problem. It does not go back on the die maker.